Some environmental activists have described Israel's devastating war on Gaza as ecocide. The term refers to the devastation and destruction of the environment to the detriment of life. It was first used during the Vietnam War. A group of scientists was concerned by the US government's use of a toxic herbicide called Agent Orange to clear forests that provided Viet Cong fighters with cover and food. Well, the International Criminal Court can prosecute environmental crimes. It never has. Several nations have been pushing for ecocide to have its own war crimes category. The Gaza government media office says Israel's dropped 85,000 tons of explosives. The UN estimates it's damaged or completely destroyed more than 75% of buildings. And the military pollution and contamination of the soil, water and the air is going to take years to clean up. More than half of the farmland in Gaza has been destroyed in Israeli attacks. The Israeli military is reportedly pumping seawater into the underground network of tunnels used by Palestinian fighters. And that could also cause long-term damage to the strip's only freshwater supply, underground aquifers, and make agricultural land barren for decades. Well, before the war, Gaza had a functioning agricultural sector, despite the Israeli blockade. In 2022, its farmers exported produce worth more than $16 million. But that changed over the past year, when Israel waged war not only on the people of Gaza, but also on its agricultural lands and ecosystems. Our environment editor, Nick Clark, has this report.
The harvests helped ease the grip of years of Israel's blockade. There were crops of strawberries and yields of sweet potatoes and aubergines. There were tomatoes grown in the greenhouses of Gaza and groves of date and olive trees. And then now crops raised, orchards uprooted, greenhouses destroyed. What the bombs didn't wipe out, the bulldozers did. Agricultural land has been poisoned with heavy metals from munitions. Tanks have compacted soil, making areas impossible to farm.
This vegetable nursery was fully functional before the Israeli attacks. It's now completely destroyed by incendiary bombs. We lost all our tools and equipment and all the vegetable seedlings we had grown.
So satellite images analysed by Al Jazeera show that well over 60% of Gaza's farmland has been damaged or destroyed by the Israeli attacks. This is Beit Lahir in June 2023. It's an area famous for its strawberries, and as you can see, the fields are green and full of produce. But spin on 11 months and they're crisscrossed by vehicle tracks devoid of any produce. This is Zaytun. Again, the fields are green, but 11 months on, all the greenery has vanished. The air is polluted with dust and asbestos from destroyed buildings. According to a preliminary investigation by the UN's Environment Programme, Israel has generated over 39 million tons of debris in Gaza. Much of it contaminated with unexploded ordnance and other hazardous substances.
The military actions so far have nearly destroyed most of Gaza's environment as we know it. 2/3 of all agriculture areas have been destroyed by military operations, by tracked vehicles, by bombings. And over 45% of all greenhouses and over 50% of all agricultural wells have been destroyed. So that means there's substantially damage to the environment where people in Gaza are depending on.
Rubbish collection has stopped. Sewage has made its way into streets, tents, and the sea, poisoning ecosystems, making fish unsafe to eat at a time when the Strip faces famine. With fresh water contaminated and many wells destroyed, the Palestinians' ability to draw deep from an innate resilience is being eroded by a year of relentless Israeli assault. Nick Clark, Al Jazeera.
I'm going to bring in Kate Mackintosh. She's the Executive Director of the UCLA Law Promise Institute in Europe. She's specialising in human rights. She's joining us from Amsterdam. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. For people who don't know Gaza, it might come as a surprise that it had such a strong agricultural industry. Why do you think it was such a significant target for Israel's military?
Well, exactly for that reason. And I think we've seen the scale of destruction, and it's been reported actually more than it has been in previous contexts, because of our rising awareness of the long-term significance of environmental destruction. So I think your report there did an excellent job of talking about the scale of destruction. What we're understanding now, which has been maybe underreported in other conflicts, is the way this has the potential to really undermine any kind of sustained recovery after the conflict is over.
I want to ask you about the legal side of this. Why is what's known as ecocide not regarded as a crime or against humanity or prosecuted as such when it clearly affects so many people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, as you're aware, and as you mentioned earlier, there has been a proposal now to add the crime of ecocide to the statute of the International Criminal Court. That's just happened. It was proposed by a number of Pacific Island states, Vanuatu, Samoa, and Fiji. But it doesn't currently exist in the statute. And I think the reasons for this are really the lack of appreciation of the interrelatedness between our environment and ourselves, which is no longer the case. I mean, as we proceed into destroying our environment in general, the understanding that wherever this crime occurs, it's a crime against all of us, and therefore should be an international crime or crime against humanity, as you put it, is becoming more and more widespread.
I mentioned before that the International Criminal Court can apparently prosecute environmental crimes, but it never has. What are the restrictions to it doing that? Why have those cases not been brought, given the fact that we've seen levels of devastation during conflicts, of course, not just in Gaza, but in other conflicts and wars around the world in previous years?
Well, there are two answers to that question, actually. Traditionally, or usually, the answer is that the threshold is very high in the way that environmental damage in wartime is prohibited in the statute of the court. But actually, I think the real answer is lack of imagination, because in fact, the environment is protected in conflict quite substantially. And the International Committee for the Red Cross, for example, has been doing work to try and raise awareness about this. But the current prosecutor of the International Criminal Court is paying attention to this and is actually working now on a policy to guide his prosecution of environmental crimes under the existing laws and the statute. So there is law there. There is law under which the kind of war crimes we've seen in Gaza against the environment can be prosecuted. And the prosecutor at the International Criminal Court is signalling that he is willing to start putting that into practice.
Kate Mackintosh, we appreciate you being with us on Al Jazeera, ma'am. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Thank you.